Welcome. Today, we're going to break down Maryland's charitable solicitation registration requirements for nonprofit organizations. This explainer is part of our multi-state fundraising compliance series, where we really try to cover these topics in practical terms for nonprofit leaders and finance teams. And this resource is provided by Ironwood Registrations. It's a really common misconception. A lot of nonprofits work so hard to get their federal tax-exempt status from the IRS, and they assume, okay, our compliance work is done. But really, that federal status is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Most states, and that definitely includes Maryland, have their own very distinct rules for regulating charitable fundraising. So what's the core rule in Maryland? It's actually pretty straightforward. If your nonprofit is planning to ask for donations from Maryland residents, you absolutely must register with the state and get approval before you start doing any of that. So let's walk through exactly how that works.
Okay, so who's in charge of all this? Well, in Maryland, charitable fundraising is regulated by the Secretary of State. And to be more specific, it's handled by the Charitable Organizations Division. This is the office that keeps the official registry of nonprofits, and they're the ones who issue the certification letters that basically give you the green light to fundraise in the state. Now for the critical question that every nonprofit has to ask. Does this rule actually apply to us? So let's take a look at the scope.
The requirement in Maryland applies if your organization is located in the state and you're asking for donations, or, and this is the key part, if you're located outside of Maryland but you solicit donations from people who live there. This also includes any fundraising campaign that happens to reach donors within the state. And it's really important to understand how broadly the term solicitation is defined. We're not just talking about phone calls or direct mail here. It includes online donation platforms, email and social media campaigns, and fundraising events. Basically, if you're asking Maryland residents for money, it's almost certainly going to be considered solicitation. So, if you've figured out that yes, you do need to register, what does that process actually look like? Let's break down the initial filing. The process is pretty straightforward, really. It involves three main steps. You'll start by completing an online application with the Maryland Secretary of State. Then you'll submit all the required documents. And once everything is approved, you'll get your certification letter and you can officially begin soliciting. To complete that application, you'll need to have a few key documents ready. This is going to typically include your IRS determination letter, your most recent Form 990, your formation documents like articles of incorporation, a list of your officers and directors, and some other financial information. The filing fee in Maryland is based on your organization's charitable contributions, and that doesn't include government grants. The fee itself ranges from $0 all the way up to a maximum of $300. Now, like a lot of states, Maryland does offer exemptions from this registration requirement, but the way they handle them is a bit more structured. So the big question is, could your organization be exempt from registering? Let's explore the common scenarios. One of the most common exemptions is for organizations that receive less than $25,000 in contributions annually. But there's a very important condition here. This only applies if you do not use a professional solicitor. This is so crucial. Exemptions in Maryland are not automatic. You can't just assume you're exempt because you meet the criteria. You have to formally file with the state to actually claim it. For that under $25,000 exemption, you have to file an annual exempt organization fundraising notice to maintain that status. For other types, like religious organizations, membership groups, or educational institutions, it's generally just a one-time filing to get state approval for the exemption. So, once you're registered, compliance becomes an ongoing process. Let's take a look at the annual renewal requirements. And this timeline lays it out perfectly. Your renewal filing is due 6 months after the end of your fiscal year. Now, Maryland provides a 60-day grace period before any late fees apply, and if your registration is current, you can also get an automatic extension of about 4.5 months. So maintaining good standing really involves just a few key actions. You've got to track those renewal deadlines, monitor your fundraising activities, keep your financial documentation in order, and of course, submit exemption filings when they're applicable. Ultimately, all of these rules serve a really clear purpose. Maryland's requirements are designed to promote transparency in the nonprofit sector and to protect the donors who support your mission. Because the state requires that formal approval before you fundraise and has such structured rules for exemptions, it's just vital to review them carefully. So how can your organization best navigate these requirements, not just in Maryland, but across all the states where you fundraise? Well, if your organization needs some help managing charitable solicitation registrations, Ironwood Registrations specializes in helping nonprofits stay compliant. You can learn more or request assistance over at ironwoodregistrations.com.